I wasn't really thinking of it, but when Jason Peasley finally was just like, I move we vote.
Well, I think everybody, even myself, we got so caught up in the discussion that we forgot that was an option.
Yeah, and I was
just
thank you.
Yeah, everyone was like,
yes. I mean, it shut down a few people that wanted to probably add something, but we'd already heard everything that's going to be said.
3 hours, I would think so.
well,
There's more to
I'd say
2.5 total.
total, and
that includes the school budget meeting.
which did take a bit of time.
That took 45 minutes.
Yes.
Because we didn't start till late because the line was out the door. By the way,
Sure, yeah. Google Docs for me is like my business emails through Google and my private emails through Yahoo, so it's always difficult for me to sync up with those because when I go to do it, I never get permission, and then I've got to resubmit it for. Oh, thank you.
Before we start, can I just, if anyone wants one of these gun safety awareness flyers from the Camden rally I just came from, I picked up a few extras, including a new organization for Maine.
Safety awareness?
Yeah.
Just in general?
It was a rally, well, it was a rally in response to Texas.
Oh.
Okay, well, it is 6:02. Welcome, everyone. Okay, so Arlene and Michael, just want to make sure that you can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Great.
I can hear
All right.
you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jordan. He's just moving some chairs so we can see your faces.
I haven't seen Mike's face in so long.
Okay, so let's open the meeting with any public comment. There's no members of the public in Zoom. Are there any comments from the public that members of the committee would like to pass along? Okay, seeing none. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes from May 12th, 2022.
I move that we approve the minutes from May 12th, 2022.
second.
Okay, moved by Jordan, seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Okay, since it's a hybrid meeting, we'll do a roll call vote. Arlene, how do you vote? I'll take that as a yes. Michael, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, but to approve, and who was the second? Which Steve?
Jordan moved, and
It's
Steve.
Steve or Steven? Yeah.
I'm Steven.
If you hear Steven, it's Colti. If you hear Steve, it's Hand.
And who seconded it?
Steve Hand.
Steve Hand. Thank you.
Yeah, but Jordan made the motion.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, Michael, how do you vote?
I approve. To approve.
Okay. Steve?
Approve.
Okay. Approve. Jordan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passes. All right. Moving on to discussion of the feasibility study. Mark, the floor is yours.
Right. As you know, I provided a draft that did not include a number of items pending some further discussions and sort of movement from both the committee and Axiom. One of the items that was important to me, which I still do not have, unbelievably, but it is what it is updated cost analysis from Hawkeye Connections, which is sort of it's my go-to construction provider, and I wanted them to prove out the numbers on the construction side so that at least on the public model that I provided and all of the different numbers there, those were all based on a cost analysis of construction, right? So, and then from there, it was take rates and other things and all of that. That they promised that to me by today, last week. It still did not come. I talked to them today, and I still do not have it. So as soon as I have it, I will update the numbers. The second big item from my perspective that is unresolved in the feasibility study is more about how we're going to handle an LCI approach, conversation, and in the draft proposal that I sent, I think I laid out 3 or 4 different sort of action items. One of them was not collecting poll data, but that was nice to hear that maybe that would occur. But there are separate reasons to know that, not just from an LCI perspective. So one of the things that I hope, and I haven't done this myself, but one of the things I hope to have a little bit of a discussion about is, we've been going round and round on this for a number of months, at least in my mind, the committee and Axiom, about how we approach LCI, what would we try to achieve, what would we get out of it, what are the questions we would ask them, those kinds of things. And those are all in the recommendations, like we need to develop a sort of a playbook about how we approach them. But that really depends on the committee getting settled on approaching them at all at some point, and what does that look like, and are they ready, meaning committee or town, I don't know, ready to have a serious conversation with LCI in the fact that, are we entering into a negotiation with LCI? Because what happens if they say, yeah, we'll get back to you with a bunch of stuff, and you're not really into it in the first place? What does that mean versus going to them and saying, we want these things, which several of you have had different opinions about what that would mean. You know, a lot of times in this environment, providers like Axiom, not that excited about being told what we should or should not do. Given how much work is out there and how much we can do, we're like, we'll just work with the communities that want to work with us. We don't need to be pushed around too much. We have an approach. This is how we do it, and take it or leave it kind of thing. I mean, we work with these. I'm being a little crass, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, is that the right approach? Stephen has said in the past that we needed to go with maybe not just a stick, but maybe a little bit of a honey. But we have to determine what that means. And I think part of that is relying on us doing the poll work to understand where their service is or isn't, so that we can ask at least intelligent questions about what's in that pipe.
Well, we did have some discussion on this topic, perhaps a meeting in which you weren't here, last meeting.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the consensus was that we don't want to approach them until we have hard numbers, know what our position is, and can actually deal in concrete matters.
Well, and then there's also the logistical question of how we have to go about that according to town rules. So we should probably, again.
Right,
yeah.
there is that aspect, but we don't want to approach them until we know.
Well, even if we're allowed to negotiate on behalf of the town as well, because, we'll probably have to talk to David. I don't know if that's something that will go into an executive session, because it has to do with, negotiating what could be a contract, or even just to find out what, if the select board can authorize the broadband committee to do that on behalf of the town, or if it's something that we need to pass by the town attorney to see, there's a few steps that we have to clear. But first, like you said, and I agree, the last meeting was fantastic, that we really need to find out what the comprehensive picture is, and then we can bring that to the select board. The select board will go through the bureaucratic process of that, and then there will be a sit down that's arranged through the proper channels. So I didn't mean to just interject with that, but I think it's important to look at the scope of the process.
I think that's fine. I was just going through step A.
No, and you're totally.
At the last meeting, Stephen laid it out the best as far as it's a carrot first, but we've got the stick ready. So we have to have all that information in front of us so that we can properly have that discussion, and we've got to base it, as Jordan just said, on whatever the town allows us to do.
Dave, the first rudimentary step was probably doing the poll. That's it.
Yeah, so I'm not so worried about how we go through the town. But back to I've always thought if we go through the whole due diligence of planning our own system, and we totally know, baked in, what it costs, what it will work like, how much of a pain in the neck it's going to be to put it into place. Then you go back to LCI and those are the standards they have to beat. And the question you just put your finger on is, how do you ever trust if they give you nice words? But that's where you'd have to figure out how to, and you could advise us on contractual language or scope or qualitative language that would lock them in. And if we went ahead with them and they didn't meet those terms, we'd get rid of them and go build our own system. So I think the first thing still is to, and I'm not discounting your idea of getting grants and having the sweetener, but are we really that far apart on this? I don't think we are.
I don't think so. I also don't think it needs to be an executive session or anything to have that conversation. I would imagine we have the numbers from the study. We tell the select board, well, we share the study with the select board and say, we'd like to speak with LCI and in an open session and ask them, do you want to partner with us? We have these basic parameters. Are you interested? And then if they're like, yes, we are very interested, then it can go further from there.
Right. It's been my position from the beginning that or since I've been involved, since that we don't go that path and at least exhaust all that, we'll never win on the other side as far as being able to say to the townspeople, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
One of the key questions that needs to be answered is, if there are unserved homes by their fiber, that they're not served by their fiber, what does that mean? How many of them are there generally? It doesn't have to be perfect, but generally. And that would mean likely that you could get a grant for those homes that are not served by fiber, because they're necessarily on CCI or on consolidated DSL likely, or I don't know. They're Tidewater DSL.
Yeah.
Right, Tidewater DSL. So if that's the case, that would be interesting to know, because that would be a basis for a grant, whether it's with Tidewater, LCI, or whether it's with another provider. Anybody can go apply for that kind of money.
Yeah.
I think I said 2 meetings ago, because I wasn't at the last meeting, that maybe I didn't actually, because we've now gotten grants from the state, Axiom, 3 of them. One that we had no business getting for Southport for $400,000 out of a $2.1 million project. I cleverly applied to do a bunch of things and said, this is what we need, is $400,000 to do this municipal network that's going to serve these unserved homes. And so I took the 14 homes that were unserved, which you would say is probably 50 grand to serve, maybe less, and made that a $400,000 grant and got approved because it was municipally owned and they had all the match in place and everything. So if that's achievable, and I felt like I left money on the table in some of the other grants I got after looking at some of the other winners. There were 8 winners. We were 3 of the 8. And I felt like I think I was a little conservative. I could ask for more. Now, we'll see what the next round brings for any project. It'll be very, very competitive, I think, in the next round. But there's an advantage to, I apologize, my dad, who's 85, he's in the hospital. He's going to be fine, I think. Perfectly fine. He's all fine. But my sister and my mother have called me in the last 5 minutes, so apologies for that. But I talked to them several times today, so we're fine. I think that the knowing where those places are, and we're happy to provide resources, but I think, as Stephen sort of was suggesting in the pictures and all that, it's kind of a little fun activity in its own way for some local folks to do it, because I think it's just helpful just to the community to know people are out there and doing things and all that. But if you need our further assistance, we can send resources down to try to help look at those areas. I mean, I think you're just looking for where you think the issues are, and at the beginning of roads, if you know it doesn't go any further, you know that road is unserved, so to speak, shouldn't be too bad, I think, from an effort standpoint, but that would be really helpful. I think on the backside of that, we want to, Axiom would like to, we're going to look at, and we haven't done this yet, but I think we should look at the, what they call an instance, the State Broadband Map that is produced by Tilson. It is the Bible at the moment for where connectivity is and where it isn't. I think you've looked at this, or we've talked about this, or if you haven't looked at it, we have access to it. Tilson has access to it. If somebody here from Tilson is here, we could probably get access to it. No, we have access to it, and that would tell you what they see as served versus unserved. It will not match, I don't believe, what you are going to know in the field when you go out. So there'll be some arguments there, but generally speaking, what I'm trying to, long story short, that work can work for both a new provider and for LCI. In LCI's case, a little bit of a carrot perhaps to say we've done some investigation, we think we can get money from grants, we'll work with you on that to try to reduce the cost.
Is that information part of the connecting, what do they call it, intelligence?
Yes, platform. Yes, that's the other name of it. Yes, yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay. Stephen.
2 questions. I did see the announcement of the 8 awards, and I was wondering if you could tell us, because I know that the Connectivity Authority is in the process of lining up these award rounds and the rulemaking that is associated with each of them. I haven't seen on their website, which I'm on, any news of the next one of the rules. Have those been announced and I'm just not seeing it?
No, but if you were looking, if they were published, it's very likely they will get published on the main Connectivity Authority website.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Oh, you are there, okay. The last, I looked at the board notes for this next Connectivity Connect Main Authority meeting, which is next week, and they have not worked out the translation of how Connect Main and connectivity works together. So I don't think we're going to see anything until that sort of basic function is worked. We've been told, Andrew Butcher's told me directly, he's thinking September. They're feeling some pressure to get money on the street because there are some strings attached to the federal money, even though it's coming through the state. So they are feeling pressure to get it out. But what that looks like, it appears that there will be some changes on the margins. So for example, things like in the last round, you had to inform the current providers and ask them if they were going to provide service within the next year of 100 over 100 or better. And you had to get a no answer back for you to proceed with the application. That's going away apparently. And there's some other there's some marginal things that I think are going to change, but I'm not, I believe strongly that the state is all in on municipally owned regional projects. They are all in and you get extra points for that. That's why we were awarded, frankly, all 3 of our projects.
Well, that was my second question, but before we go to that, I just want to say, so we as a committee have decided one of our main jobs is keeping track of the funding rounds and the deadlines and the terms. So that is going to be, I think we need to be clear who's going to keep doing that and that we're keeping on doing that. You were doing that.
I was, yeah.
And I hope you...
I've been remiss in the last couple of weeks though.
Well,
but anyway, I will do that.
Yeah, and the website is now much deeper. The main Connectivity Authority website is much deeper. But as Mark was saying, the main rules are still not clarified, including on municipally owned. Second question, on the last 8 of which you guys got 4 or 3, am I right to have read that
there was not a requirement for the town to approve. In other words, a ISP could go in and apply on their own without necessarily the town participating.
Yes, they can do that. They were all unsuccessful. There were many that were rejected because there was not enough town participation.
Okay.
With municipally owned systems,
Well, sure.
that's already built. I didn't have to say much. You had town participation. So, but for all, there were a slew of rejections, and part of that rejection was because they didn't have town participation.
Which companies had rejected applications?
I'm not fully, I haven't looked at it recently, but there were, I'm trying to think, Premium Choice had several rejected. Unitil had a project rejected. I'll have to look at the list a little bit more.
Do you think LCI had any that were rejected?
I don't remember. Okay. It's very possible.
The landscape has changed so much in the last year.
They,
it's like the exact
as you know, they got awarded through NTIA for Jefferson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they've not been big applicants to the state too much, really. Not like acts like that. Like we don't let something pass. Yeah, we always apply for something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to take a look, but it's on there somewhere. He might be able to find it right away. There were a number of rejections.
Okay.
They only listed successful, not unsuccessful.
There were 22 applications and 8 were awarded, I believe.
Yeah. Jake.
Isn't the current push though a middle mile projects from MCA?
There are a number of things that they're thinking about, and I assume that will get onto the street also for applications. They just put out an application for 4 provisional wireless projects.
Right. So their previous meeting, that was the thing that I listened to. First was the middle mile, emphasis on the next round of grants, and secondly, these pilot projects for various types of wireless.
Right.
Yeah.
All red zone or?
No, all 5G, red zone, anything Starlink. They were just really going to evaluate the different technologies.
Yeah, good.
Or try to find pilots to do that.
Yeah. I think that there's a difference there between stuff they're funding on their own versus the grants that they're talking about. Because I know when I talked to somebody there a while back, they were saying, yeah, they'll be looking at middle mile. They might be doing some middle mile projects on their own, which I think means it's not.
There's a lot of money, yes, yeah.
Well, there is some federal, and I don't know if some of the state money is targeted specifically for middle mile. So I would suppose it may be coming back.
There's also been some talk, at least privately, I don't know if at the meetings themselves, because I don't always make 12 o'clock on a Friday, right?
Yeah.
I don't always make that meeting, but there's some talk about doing what would essentially be a reverse auction. The state saying, here are places we want served, come in with your best price and we will give you a grant for X amount to serve these areas based on your pricing. So I bet you there'll be some of that. The state is trying to be professional in an unprofessional way, so we'll see how it works.
When is their next meeting? Is it tomorrow or a week? Or?
I don't remember.
I
don't keep track very well. I apologize. But but for you, let's be clear, you are going to be considered served, period, no matter what the maps say. And you're going to have to disprove where those areas are that you are not served or approve that those areas that are not served are not served. And you're gonna have to have data to back that up in some way. And part of that is the beginning of this work that you're gonna do. So that's gonna be super important one way or another. There are no federal programs or state programs that you deserve money for, just so you know. That said, I got $400,000 for the town of Southport, and they had no business applying. We had no business applying for that. So we'll see what the next round brings, and whether or not you get there in time for the next round, which is another issue, just internally, you know, how that works is going to be a real challenge. We're at the end of May. So, you know, time will fly.
So do we end up looking like somewhat like Georgetown, for $3.5 million, they got 800,000, and the rest of it was privately raised? Is that is that like an end target for where we may end up?
Yeah,
No.
something like that. That I think that's right. They were a different. They didn't have any real connectivity there, just consolidated.
Right,
PSL,
right. They had
to your point.
incumbent, but not
Right.
not
a fiber incumbent, I guess
Right.
you call it, whatever,
Right.
if that's what you would want to call it. But yeah, so yes, but that's what I see. Yeah, at best, by the way, that's at best. You would get that. I mean, there are a lot of things lined up. I mean, I worked on Georgetown. Georgetown is one of our projects. I worked on that application extensively. So, you know, did they have any business getting 800,000 from the state? I don't know. They were all privately funded. I mean, I'm looking at your numbers, sorry. I'm just looking at the numbers of what we estimated the cost here.
That's what
So
I'm asking.
it's a little over $3 million, I think. I mean, and there's some stuff in there that may bring the cost down. This is not that expensive a project, relatively speaking. It's dumb for me to say this now, but it's like, I'm starting to talk in 5, 6, 7, 8 million all the time. And so I'm like, oh, what's 600,000? Over 20 years, right? When you amortize that kind of money out over time, you know, a few $100,000 here or there. Anyway, sorry, but you're going to be, you know, $3 million. That's, you know, I mean, if you get any kind of money off of that, and we save some money on make ready, and a few other things happen here. I mean, I've modeled that 70% take rate. We're not going to get 70%. He says we're not going to get 70%. And we're going to get 50, right, percent. So we save, you know, pretty soon you're down near $2 million, maybe. And then you get a little, I don't know. There's a lot of things that could happen. So that's really, to me, when you go to see LCI, there's going to be a number that you're thinking about, and it will not be the full number of the construction that I've got in here. It'll be something less than that, which we will model through here for you, just to make sure that you know what it is. And so the work that Steve is doing is going to be good.
Mark, is there a model where it's a non-recourse revenue bonds for the town, where if the whole venture fails, the town is not on the hook for the $2-3 million?
GWI says there is.
Okay.
I'm skeptical. Well, I'm more than skeptical. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can have an uncollateralized loan through bonding that does not have anybody on the hook for it. I've never heard of such a thing.
Who would fund that?
I mean, like the BUD, in GWI's model is you form a broadband utility district with the communities that you're working in, a BUD, a BUD, and you then go out and get this money, and they found a way, or they discovered, or they learned of a way to do this so that the towns are not on the hook for that bonding.
Well, look, can we talk specifically about one of those? GWI in Northport. There's a $655,000 award from Connect Maine. This is a project that's underway out of a total cost of $840. So they got $655 out of $840. Do you know if the rest of that, and it says here that it's part of the bond program of Connect Maine Authority, and it's already started.
Was that one of the 8 projects approved or a previous one?
Previous.
The match came from private investors there in the previous.
This is the, whatchamacallit, the Bay Shore.
Yeah, the Bayside. Yeah, Bayside.
Bayside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, interestingly, LCI has received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Oh.
6 awards.
Well, they're starting to get there then.
So
That's right.
Lincoln,
yeah. Bremen.
Bodenham, Bremen,
Yeah.
Bristol,
Yeah.
Alma, and
Okay, so there you go. They're doing better.
Jefferson.
Yeah.
So, and it would be interesting to know. I mean, one of the things, and this relates to the Broadband Committee and the authority. Certainly, if the application has town approval, it's stronger. You made that point, and that makes obvious sense. Certainly, if there is to be any kind of bonding, it must have public approval from the local government. That makes sense. But if it is not, LCI has zero official relationship to the town of Lincolnville. It is not authorized by the town. It does not have permits from the town. The town has zero regulatory or supervisory authority over LCI. And LCI could apply for funding to top up its infrastructure in Lincolnville without the town, just as it has presumably done in other places. So all of those are true statements?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, whether the first conversation actually doesn't even necessarily require. We'd like to have the town involved, but we don't have to have the town involved. We could have a private conversation, not the broadband committee, just private citizens talking to LCI about whether or not they could or would or want to apply for money to top up what we're guessing is the 30% of the town that is not currently passed by fiber. A larger percentage of the town doesn't get fiber, but they're passed. They could. There's about 30%, that's my guess, that is not passed, so would not have the choice even of subscribing. Is that all true?
Yes. Caveat. That process at the state will require a match. So even if you do extremely well, like they did in Northport, somebody had to come up with the 30% or so match.
Right.
In that case, it was private investors.
Right.
The question to them would be, are you going to put up that cash?
Right.
I don't know what their answer would be.
Right.
Well, don't forget, this all started with them coming to us 3 years ago, asking us to participate in the match.
To give them a few $100,000.
Yeah.
In 2019.
And that's where the bad blood became, people became familiar with that. Steve, are you done? I have some questions.
I'm done.
Okay. Your report was great. You got it out quick. But when are we going to see the version that really drills down into, which model you're recommending? I assume it's owned by town, operated by a service provider, but give us advice on that.
I would tell you.
I'm not asking right now, but.
No, well, I'll tell you already. No problem. I am still really open to an LCI relationship. I think that's your best path forward, personally. I now understand the reservations about the LCI situation and what they charge to the consumer and this idea that they sort of meter out the broadband, like they don't even offer symmetrical service on a fiber connection, and how they handle the CARES Act funding all give me quite a bit of pause about them. So I think that it would be interesting to know what their position is and where they are and how it works, and I still think it will certainly be the path of least resistance from my perspective. That said, it's not just about the 30%, as Stephen says, in my mind, even though that's where the money's going to be. I think this is about how about everybody else. I mean, you can't charge $1,000 to hook up a customer. You're not going to get customers.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to figure this out.
But I'm trying to move off the LCI thing right now. I get that, and I'm actually somewhat in your camp on that one. But I'm back to the question of when can we get a fully thought through model of doing our own municipal system.
You're almost there.
Okay, yeah. And I'm also very interested in what's happening with financing costs, with everything that's going on in the world. What's that looking like?
Yeah.
I'm very interested in finding out if there's even construction folks to do these things over the next 36 months, or what's that like with the whole world jumping in? So you're thinking that part of this report could be refined in the next amount of months or days?
And then to add one more thing to that, is it realistically an option if we build a municipal system where volunteers can be doing some of that work to lower the costs? That could be reflected in the report.
He's determined to dig.
Right. We've never been successful using that model. Everybody always believes that that's a possibility. We were all in a variety of places on that model. It has not proven itself out yet.
Model for people to
local people
be helping,
to be
okay.
supporting.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, you can get 1 or 2 people, maybe, to get trained and to do some things, maybe. But beyond that, we've not found it to be particularly, well, first off, it ends up costing quite a bit more money because you have to handhold everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some cost there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that where this worked best was out on islands where there's no regulation. People just do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
We just drag fiber around. I did it myself. We just drag fiber around and put it where it needed to go. We didn't even use the poles, or we put up our own poles. We did all kinds of stuff.
I love that.
Right? I mean, we just did what we needed to do. Nobody's car is registered. Everybody just sits on the back of the car and drives around. I mean, stuff like that. It happens, and so there was not really any concern for what happens when a piece of line snaps and hits somebody in the side of the face and they have to go to the hospital. Or what happens when, XYZ, they're just used to doing this kind of thing. Here, you're a little bit more, not sophisticated, but you have it's different here.
Regulated.
So,
litigious.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think there are some savings. I think local can help. But I think it's going to be, I don't know if you're going to really see that go through the pricing in the same way.
Okay.
So I don't disagree with you. I'm all in on this, by the way. I love the idea of working with local. We train a local person in every jurisdiction that Georgetown, we're hiring somebody. We sent them to Splice School, and we're showing them how to do it, and they're going to be our person in Georgetown. Yeah. And they're just off the street, and we hired them. It's great. I'm going to pay them $25 an hour, just whenever they work, and it's going to be great. They're going to be happy. It's going to be a third job for them, or whatever it is they do during the day and night, and eventually that could be a full-time job for them because we got a lot of business going on down there. So the same thing could happen here, depending on who you're working with and all of that. You get away from Axiom, GWI is not even he's going to laugh at you when you mention that. Mm-hmm. Pioneer, all these people, they're not into that, what we're talking about. But I still am, but I just mentioned that maybe in this place, it might not be it might be not, okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're in, fine.
No, I want the answer. When do you think we can get the more refined plan?
I'm waiting on the final numbers from the constructor.
Okay.
Once I have those, I'll feel like your model is generally complete. I'll look at it again, and what I'll want to do is look at that model and then sort of take all of the other elements into consideration, say, okay, this is 3.2 million, but here are some places where you might save money or go get money or whatever, which is I kind of need to know where the 30% is, or the 20%, or the 10%, whatever it is, where those people are, so we can sort of model that too, because we're going to model a grant. I could do that without knowing that. I could just put in a number and say, this is what I think you could probably get regardless. And I'll look at the intelligence platform, whatever they call it, at the state, and sort of get a sense from them what that looks like. And so I'm thinking you'll have this in 2 weeks. Pretty close. That still is not going to complete this, because I still want some LCI stuff to put in here eventually if we meet with LCI and all of that. But at least I read it over today and I was like, oh, this is not too bad. I was like, oh, okay. I'm giving them, this is, I'm not as bad as I think I am. This is okay. Like, I feel like this is okay, getting there. So we're pretty close, I think.
I thought it was amazing how fast you turned this out, but it's somewhat generalized, and so now
let's get very specific.
Yeah.
If the committee wants there are two things. If the committee wants a strong recommendation for a municipal network that is not LCI or CCI, you will have that. That will be stated in here. I'm happy to do that, and I'm comfortable with that. But I also want to make sure that we're a little agnostic in the reporting and say, okay, but here are some positives to work with the current provider, because the number could be less.
Yeah.
But the point, what I was trying to make the point of, if they come in with $1 million, like their project is $1 million and they're going to try to find funding, and you're at $2 million after all these other savings over 20 years, you don't LCI is going to control the pricing. I mean, maybe not, but I think so. They're going to own the system. 5 years from now, when you guys are all off doing whatever you're doing,
Pushing up daisies.
They're going to do whatever they want to do, period. No matter what they gave you for a promise at a meeting like this. So unless you have it in contract, well, then you say, okay, we're going to have a contract. Yeah, well, good luck with that with LCI. If they're putting money on the table, they're not going to be beholden to the town. At least in my mind, they would have a hard time with that.
Well, so the question is, I agree with all of that, and that obviously is the whole context in which we are having this conversation. My thought, which I'm welcome disagreement from any quarter on, is that if we are, because there is no muscle in regulating or controlling any ISP. This is not just true for LCI, but this is true nationwide.
That's right.
To me, the only way we would have a longer term leverage in quality and cost of service in our particular situation is if we jointly applied for funds and we, either the town or some group, was required or responsible for continuing, in other words, if the terms of the grant, which is why I'm so obsessed with the rulemaking at the Maine Connectivity Authority, and why I'm hoping that they will come up with rules that require not only public-private partnerships to apply for the money, but then to continue to manage the money. If we can get that, then they will have both an incentive and a discipline to be a little more responsive. We already know that we are paying among the highest rates for among the worst service in the area. We know this.
Hold on. Jordan, did you have a point?
Well, just before we get too far away from the I'm picking up Dave's questions. Just, I was hoping to get the financials to be updated to reflect the incremental interest rates that the Fed is coming out with. That's just something that I would like to see reflected in there, just because, we've gone up like a half point in the last few months and inflation's not slowing down and they're not being creative with how they deal with it. And I feel like there are more interest rate hikes that are coming and how that affects municipal bond lending. If there was a way to have some simple projection to see, if the rates go up X amount, because unless you feel like that's something that's pointless.
But isn't that almost independent of this study? I mean, that's a general.
Look at the Goldman Sachs bond index. It has nothing to do with this study. We know where rates are going because they're published.
No, but he's saying that could we have that reflected in some way, like if
because
the rates go to this,
we're putting out a bond for $3 million and we're looking at it at a quarter of percentage, which is where it was at. But more realistically, where it's going to be is at 1 1/4. That's all I'm saying.
Is that something that we should have the town check with their bond bank counsel, or is that something that you do?
I use the MMA will not talk to me at any time. Oh, they're so. But I use their bond bank calculator. That's what I used for this.
Okay.
So I can look at it and see if things have changed.
Yeah.
If they've changed those numbers, I don't know what MMA does. I mean.
Unless that was far, I just felt like that would be a useful thing to happen, is maybe, it doesn't even have to be like, 5 different interest rates. We just look ahead, and even though it will be a hypothetical, if we could look at it like a 1.5%, because this project is not going to happen in the next 6 months. So if we're going to be borrowing a year ahead of time, I just would like to have a realistic projection if the interest rates continue to go up, which I'm of the mind that it most likely will.
I think I'd be more concerned. I'm concerned about that. I am concerned about that. But I'm less concerned about that than the cost of material and the cost of labor. A year and a half from now, both of those things, right now, the cost of materials is almost, is exponentially rising, 10% month over month. I mean, it's just, I've quoted projects a month and a half ago that are 50, 60, 70, 150,000 over budget now that we quoted a month and a half ago. So it's like part of the process moving forward, which is you asked a bunch of these questions, which I think were legitimate, is, will there be help? Could you construct something? You don't know that until you ask somebody, till you are ready to go. Nobody's going to commit to anything until you are ready to sign a contract, and they're going to commit, and you're going to say, okay, we'll slot this in when we're ready, when you're ready to go. That's the only way. One of the attractions of working with Axiom, besides how handsome I am, is that we work with Hawkeye, and we bring Hawkeye in from the beginning, so that when they're understanding, like, okay, pull make ready process is 8 to 10 months, and we're ordering materials now, and in 10 months from now, we can slot you in. We know what the size is. We know what we need to do. We know if we need to surge to help bring additional people in to help us, and you're set in a line of other projects. That's how the constructors are going to do it moving forward. It's going to be a challenge. If you don't have that line, nobody's going to tell you, yeah, we're ready to go. Or maybe they will tell you, yeah, we're ready to go when you're ready. What else are they going to say? So I think it's a bit of a challenge. And I think the same with all of the points that you made, not just the finances, but cost of materials, cost of labor. I was talking to Hawkeye this morning about these NTIA projects we got awarded. They're a year away from being built. He's quoting pricing, and the feds took out all of the contingencies, all the contingency funds. They took them out. They said they're disallowed. So Hawkeye's looking at that and going, if I can order the materials this month, I think I'm okay. I'll live with eating the labor cost next year. But that's going to be a continuing struggle, and just wait till they get asked to go to New York or Florida, because they're going to be, and they're going to make double what they can make here. We may not have Hawkeye much longer, from my perspective. We'll see from our perspective.
So I want to talk about when we should approach LCI. During this conversation, I'm remembering that the select board passed the guiding principles that the town supports 100 over 100, fiber to the home, affordable pricing. And I feel like the select board is sort of under the assumption that we're going to have a preliminary conversation with LCI and we don't need to go back and ask for permission. That's sort of my sense. And so to have that conversation and say, our select board has these guiding principles, 100 over 100, affordable fiber to the home. We are open to partnering with you as long as you would meet these things and, sign a written contract saying that you would meet these things and have an affordable pricing structure, and it would only go up, a reasonable amount every year. What do you think? And have that in an open meeting. So anyways, I think perhaps having that meeting before the report is complete, and then whatever comes of that meeting can be included in the report and can inform sort of the direction of the report. And so when the report is finalized, it has that. We had this comprehensive conversation with LCI. This is what they're interested in doing or not doing. And so that way it's more informative than we've got this report and now let's go talk to LCI.
Well, the other thing, without tying into that, we've made progress, but if we keep having the same conversations every week, we really may miss whichever track we should be going down. Either how to get to the front of the line to construct something or how to get the grants to fit in with LCI. So I like your idea.
Okay.
I mean, if your report came back to us, here's the nuts and bolts of doing it yourself. Here's what you should put in for standards with LCI if they want to work with you, or whatever your ideas are on, having those safeguards. And if we had those things in the next month and got comfortable, we could be having that conversation in July. Yeah, and then we could figure out which track we're on and get going.
Well, for instance, the Georgetown thing, that's slightly more expensive than we're projecting, but the cost to the end consumer was roughly equivalent to what we pay LCI. Now, we get 100 over 20, say, and Georgetown, and a roughly equivalent price gets you 100 over 100. But that difference between 100 over 20 is underserved.
Is that true? I pay $89 for 100 over 20.
Lincolnville, quite a bit less than Georgetown for 100 over 100.
Yeah, it's not the same price.
Yeah.
You pay more like 105.
Well, I pay 89.
Yeah.
Plus the bill
required phone.
Right.
So,
I like to say
my
that.
monthly bill is $109.
Right.
And the
Right.
construction cost is $2,500 to go down my driveway.
Which is actually relatively.
So I
what we
think that's
have
more
to pay in
than
the end, get rid of that damn phone thing. But what we have to pay LCI every month is $106 or $109.
I would say this, the big marker from a consumer standpoint is the state gave extra points for any service that was less than $50 for 100 over, less than $60, less than 50 or $60, I think it was 50. For every dollar under $50 for 100 over 100, you get extra points. That's the standard that you want to operate under with them. You want to say to them, in order for us to maximize the dollars at the state, we need service, at least one tier of service that meets 100 over 100 less than this amount. Can you do that? Because that
Easy
will make
question to
us
ask, yeah.
super excited to think of moving with you, because it's not just us sitting in this room. We have to face all our neighbors eventually. And we don't want to do that without having a justification for all that. To me, that's a big, easy question, and it's not on you. This is what the state says. Where are you on this?
Yeah,
We're not just making it up.
Sort of what I was backing into. If we do all this and what we end up with is roughly equivalent to what we're already paying, we're not going to get much support. But if it's $50 for 100 over 100, then you get a lot of buy-in.
Sorry, Steve.
Almost done.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were going somewhere at the end of that, and my question is, and I'm sorry because maybe this is belaboring, but if we go through all this and we end up in the same spot, well, this has been my problem from the beginning. Why are we going to do all this work for whatever company it is to not be in any better shape? I just don't. That's the biggest thing that bothers me. Is that, like, I don't want to do legwork to get a profitable company, taxpayer dollars, for us to be trapped with our backs against the wall for the next 20 years.
Well, if we have a signed agreement,
Right.
an enforceable contract, then
Yeah,
we
there would have to be a
those-
price covenant. There would have to be service requirements. There would have to be a lot of things. It's not.
I would say so.
I know that it's more complex and we're giving a very simplified version, but it just. It's more than just, hey, will you provide that? I mean, there's so much that goes into it because.
Where is your concern with the taxpayer dollars coming from? There are no taxpayer dollars.
If they're getting grants because we're helping them go
Yeah, but
along.
so far that has not been the case.
But that's the road that we're talking about with LCI.
Right.
That's if we're not going to be. There's no scenario where we partner with LCI where they're going to give us any kind of ownership or they're going to give us any kind of control over the service, unless perhaps we're helping them leverage grants, which are tax dollars, to help them build out so that they're not using their money on capital investments, which, and I'm sorry, maybe this is a personal thing, but as a business owner who would never in a million years be afforded that by the government, it bothers me to not see a performance on the back end or a commitment or a covenant to our neighbors and to each other while we are doing legwork for a profitable company. I don't care which one it is, to not help us. That's been my concern.
So what is your suggested course of action? What we're talking about right now is whether or not we should have a conversation with LCI to ask this question, whether or not they would be able to meet the state-defined standard, and that we should have that conversation before this committee goes out of existence in September. Do you think we should not have that conversation?
I'm not saying that, but I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but that conversation is more complex than just, will you meet this rate?
So what do you suggest the conversation to be?
I think we need to talk about the terms and length of a rate being kept at a certain level, whether
so
it will
in addition
go up.
to asking them, will you meet the $50 rate, which is the state rate, you want to also include
So provisions for minimum performance requirements, so that, like,
service outage.
well, not even just that, but the fact that we actually
service 24/7.
And guarantee that what we're paying for
So
is
as a business
around.
owner, if I came to you and I said, Jordan, I'm paying you $90 a month right now for 100 over 20. I'm going to offer you $50 a month for 100 over 100. And in addition to that, I'm going to ask you for the following 5 things. Why would you say yes to that?
But you're leaving out the part where you.
Because I'm gonna take my business
Hold on.
someplace else.
Well,
We don't have that
no,
choice.
that's not.
What we do if his model works.
But wait, let me just. That's a good question. But the part that you're leaving out is the part where somebody would be saying to me, "I'm going to procure $600,000 worth of money so that you don't have to buy your tools and equipment." Like, I make jewelry and work on guns and all kinds of other stuff. And so I'm just gonna so if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I'd like you, like if a big company comes to me and they want me to do a work order of 1,000 pieces of something. Now there can either be a rate that I give for my cost of materials and other things, and then the company could say, you know what, we're gonna outfit your shop with equipment, we're gonna provide the materials, that way there's no liability for you. What makes it profitable for you to deliver that service? And for me, that would be labor-wise. Maybe I'm being convoluted with this, but that's the way I look at it. And so if somebody came to me, I would have to make a calculation. Well, look, I don't have to have payments. I don't have to deal with depreciation of equipment. I don't have to deal with investing capital out of my own pockets and taking that risk. And all I have to do is perform the service. There's a sweet spot in there where I would say, you know what? Yeah, I will do that. And that's actually, you know, when I was going to school, we had manufacturing formulas that did just that. And as the amount of pieces that you made, the price came down, but your profit margins hovered in a certain place and sometimes went up. So that's how when you make 10,000 pieces of one thing, it can be a higher, you know, it's a higher price than if you make 500,000 of one thing, because there's exponential calculations that go into that. And while it's not completely interchangeable, that is, for me, that's where I see the difference, because it's not just that we're making requirements. We also are giving them something, which is access to funding that doesn't come out of their capital. I don't know if that made any sense.
Is therefore we don't talk to them.
No, we
before.
should. We should talk to them, but it's not just, will you meet this price? Because the price isn't the only thing. It's how can you, what is going to be our ROI on this?
Oh, if you're saying that we talk to them with the carrot that we apply for a grant, which inures to their benefit, that was my whole point in the last meeting.
Well, but the guarantees on the back end is what I'm interested in. If we're going to go in a partnership, which they need, I mean, they can do it without us, but that will help them procure the money. I would like to see the discussion about, like I said, a covenant on prices being held at a certain point, there being a contract that has a performance which they can be held to, because that's not something, and I understand that that's a far-fetched thing, but, you know, if I'm paying for 100 over 100, I would like to not get 25 over 10. So that, and I didn't mean to get aggressive or excited, but that for me is the real crux of this, is that I have no problem with going to a partnership with any entity, but I just want to make sure that we're not procuring funds for whoever it is and us being left in the same place where we have absolutely no recourse to defend ourselves. That's what I would feel terrible about for our neighbors, because then we still have people paying $2,000 to $10,000 to get hooked up. They're paying the highest rates in the country, and they're also getting service that's paltry. So,
Michael, you have your hand up.
Well, I think Dave made a good point. The question is, can Mark put in his experience what would be the requirements we would want in the report? So we have those in front of us. Obviously, we can add to them, but I think with his experience, he can cover a lot of the ground that we're talking about. Then the question is, right, we walk to the meeting, say, this is what we want. How far are we going to get if we have nothing to offer? So we could say we will apply together with you for a grant, and maybe that is enough, at least to get the conversation going. But we have to acknowledge we won't have much leverage, and we'll be giving a pretty strict or intense set of requirements to them at the same time, which is fine for the starting a negotiation, I guess.
So again, let me just go back to, when do we want to meet with LCI?
I think we want to get the report that shows more detail on what our system would look like, or cost, how long it would take, the complexities of that. And then I think once we digest that and we really understand what that looks like, and we've also worked on the grants, we've worked with all of that, and we know, then I think, and once we have our strategy down, so sometime in mid to late summer, hopefully we could be the LCI. I mean, I think we should assume that LCI is rational and businesslike and all those types of things. And if we come to them and saying, we've hired the consultant, we love working with Axiom, we can go do this with them, we've got that figured out. But you're already here, and you're gonna, we're gonna somewhat compete with each other, but we're gonna be a lot cheaper. So eventually we're gonna take you out. Why don't we hear what you have to say about working with it? You have that conversation, and if they give us the flim flam, we run with you.
What I was trying to sort of nuance in the question about the $50 was, that's not an offensive question coming from the town. That's a question that the state has put out there in an application. We didn't set the standard, the state did. It's a much, much easier place to start where you want to go, which I don't disagree with where you want to go.
Yeah.
I just think, okay, can we get them to agree to a couple of things just up front?
Just first.
And if you can, then you feel better about the further negotiation after that. They're interested. They sort of tend to agree, hey, their pricing's a little high. I'm just making this up. This is where they're coming from, right? Their pricing's a little high. Hey, how do we handle, the next question is, hey, how do we handle the rest of the town? Because you've got this fiber throughout. Does that fiber allow you to hook up every customer? It's not even a question about the cost. Just We want information from them. Can that happen in the current configuration, or do you have to put in additional material, construction, something? And if that's the case, could you give us a price for that? Could we know what that is? Because we need to know how we're gonna manage this through the grant process or whatever else we do with you. And we can't go back to the town with anything until we have a better handle on what you're at. You put it on them, but you do it in a much more gentle way, in my mind.
Really hope you'll be there.
You know, and you gotta be super careful about how that question's asked, just to be sure that you're having, you wanna get them to say yes to something, or not. And if they say no, well,
maybe you lead with a written summary of what we want and the questions we have, because you could go and have the conversation and try to open with your question, can you do 50? Or maybe we can say, here's the 5 things that we really need. Can you guys think about this and come back to us with concrete responses?
this is the tension in this room about how you want to approach this. And I just need all of you to duke it out and get to this place of where you want to be, because I am okay with that, but you're going to have a less likely success rate with that approach than with what I'm suggesting is sort of let's just have a conversation. Let's not send written questions, but that depends on, are you ready to work with LCI just fundamentally in your brain, or are you not? Unless you get what you want up front, which is to your point. And I'm okay with either approach, relatively speaking, but you just need to decide how you want to get
Steve.
there.
So, your question, when, based on our charter, et cetera, I think no later than the end of July, this group needs to be ready to sit down with us. That allows us a month and a half to do whatever else we want to do to make a final recommendation to the selectmen or however it's going to go. In that, I've worked with the Mannings over 20 plus years. Handing them an ultimatum up front is we might as well not even walk in the door. We need to go basically schedule a meeting, whoever the group is, sit down with them, start the discussion, and we need to have in our pocket, here are the things we want. And it needs to be price, it needs to be bandwidth, it needs to be level of performance, it needs to be response time, all these things. Jordan was mentioning some of them or whatever, but whatever those things are, they need to be in our pocket. We need to know it's going to be 3 point whatever the $1 million is for us to build it, and we need to know that we've got 27% of our, and question for you on, we've got a lot of seasonal locations in town. How does that fit into what the state looks at when grant funding agencies look at? Is it a premise? Regardless if it's seasonal, it's a household? Awesome, okay, good. So we know how many premises in our town are not served, and we're basically saying we want every premise to be served, and we want to work with you to apply for grants to get those.
Right, and in exchange for all of that, what we're offering you is
Exactly.
right. I totally agree.
And we've got to do
I also think, by the way, that we should decide. I'm not sure that it should be all of us. I think that's
A representative
Not
group
good.
of to meet with.
some smaller group.
I think that we should have
1,000% agree with that. I was
think
going
we
to
should
mention
have
that, so
a
I agree
delegate.
with that.
And as much as I would love it to be Mark, I don't think it should be a competitor.
That's it. I was going to say that one as well.
So I think particularly because, you know, in some of the client, in some of the client work and in some of the scenarios, Axiom goes from being the consultant to being the contractor, the provider, the operator, any of those roles. So I think in fairness, we want to keep that option open for ourselves, and therefore one or two of us, like our committee chair, for example, you know, would or some group, some subset that would be delegated to have the conversation. It would be a conversation. And I agree that what we say could be written down, but I don't think we should send it to them. And then, if we do that by the end of July, I don't know exactly what the date is that we go out of business in September, but whatever that date is, we would report to the board of select persons where we're at, which would include a report on this meeting. You know, we've done a lot. We've had a professional consultant advise us. We've had a citizens group do some geographic surveying of our town. So we have our own point of view. And we've had a conversation with the incumbent who has, you know, not just the majority, the sole infrastructure in our town. And here, board, is what we found. And at that point, we can decide, you know, what happens next. Do we look for an alternative strategy? Hopefully by then, we'll also have some sense of what the upside would be for them, for LCI, of the grant funds that we could apply for. Because we would like to be able to say that we're stronger together, that we jointly want to apply. And here, by the way, are some examples of joint applications, which would be very helpful in your report to give us this fodder, where we could say, here are some lookalikes where going together with the ISP and the town, they were successful in obtaining these grants. We don't know necessarily what the full rules will be for the main connectivity authority going down the pike, but we're pretty sure that they will continue to be biased in favor of public-private partnerships and joint applications from towns, and therefore, if we do go together. So that would be the tone of the conversation, because we have something to offer as well as something to ask.
Jordan.
I was just going to finish on that. We're done on the 9:30 is our date, and we're supposed to deliver a feasibility study with comment before that date.
What does that mean?
The feasibility study that we've hired him to provide with our comment, we were supposed to deliver before that date. So
Does it say when that date is that it needs to be delivered?
September 3rd.
we have to, our committee disbands 9:30.
But it doesn't say when we are supposed to submit our report prior to that.
Okay.
It's just sometime prior to that.
Correct.
Or then.
So it ties together nice.
Right. Okay. So that gives us time.
So, well, first, so the things that I mentioned, despite my tone, I just want to make it clear that that was not an approach to meeting with LCI. Okay?
We're not sending you, don't worry.
Well, you might want to, because I actually have a very friendly relationship with Randall. We've had many private discussions over the last few months. They have been eager to talk with me. There's things that have happened. So,
Things.
very positive things. They want.
Because you have a 200 by 200, don't you?
I do.
Right.
Yeah, because look, there's vinegar and honey, and sometimes they mix together to make a delicious sauce. All right. While I'm passionate about this, I'm not brilliant, but I'm not stupid. So you guys can choose whoever represents it, but it would not be an adverse meeting. And I don't, by any scope of the imagination, suggest going in with a hammer type of approach at all. That's not, there are just things for end goal wise that are really important to me. And I just wanted to make that clear, because it's not, I've had my time with them in that manner, and it has changed into a very nice, positive relationship, and I would like to keep that going. And that's where fruitful discussions and the beginnings of negotiations start. So I'm well aware of that. I just didn't want to make it seem like that I want to be jumping at them. That's absolutely not the last thing. But pertaining to the meeting, I would like to know, I mean, are we going to get to meet with the Mannings? Because Shirley, right?
Shirley and Randall and the other brother, I can't think his name. But
I mean,
She's the sole
Randall's
decision
easy to
maker,
talk
right?
to. But what often happens is that Alan Hensley is put on the front.
we can skip Alan.
Yeah, so that is one
no
thing, but
problem.
I also feel like timeline-wise, not to rush things, but if we could do it at the beginning of July, that would probably be best, because if hypothetically that round of grant funding is coming in September, I personally would really like for us to be as prepared as possible, whether we're gonna be doing it in partnership or trying to do something on our own, that we really be ready for that. And also that I know that, and it's unfortunate because I thought that when the select board had reinstated the third iteration of the broadband committee, that we weren't going to be doing it in this 6-month increment, and we were actually going to extend it longer. Something happened, but it generally takes a month for even working at the fastest speed for whoever's on the committee at that time to get the broadband committee started again. So if we can have as many ducks in a row before then, I just feel like that would be the best thing. So if we can prevent waiting as long as possible to have that discussion, I just think it would benefit us greatly. So that's just all I feel about the timing. So it's not, if it ends up happening at the end of July or beginning of August, and that's the only way it can happen, that's what it is. But if we can really push that forward and have a clearer picture and simultaneously prepare for grant applications, I just feel like that would put us in the strongest position.
I wonder if right now we should have a subcommittee on the grants, because it's good that you're doing it, but it sounds like we should have more manpower working on that. Because if it's coming up this fall, we should.
The problem is that there's not a lot of pre-information that comes out. That NTIA grant that came out was just sprung out of the blue, and they had to scramble for it. We listened to MCA and Connect Maine, and it's still talking mostly in vague terms.
Okay.
You know, there's no schedule, at least so far at this point that we've seen.
I think the two things we need are our own study of our roads, our fielding, and Mark's study. And if we've got that and everything else we've done, it prepared, when they finally release
So we're not missing
the standards. But right now, it's in every one of these rounds of grants for the last, since 19, when Tilson jumped into one of them, it's like, it gets released, and in 90 days, they're making decisions.
That's exactly, that's what happened.
That's how quick it is. I mean, it's
Just the floodgates open.
Yeah, that's what happened with NTIA,
Yeah.
and the people who got on board, or the towns that got on board, were those who had their
they've done this.
Like buying a house, you want your pre-approval letter, you want everything done
Yeah.
and ready. And it shows, like, I mean, Stephen procured us that grant because he was timely and he was on it. And so, and I'm not saying that we'll be there, but I just think that prescience
It's
in this
not my
matter.
suggested procedure.
No, but action is important, and being ready to do that and the preparation for it is, is important. And it's like, and I don't mean to quote my father-in-law, who was my wrestling coach, but it was like, luck is when hard work meets opportunity, but it's if we just sit and are conversating rather than really compiling things and organizing it and creating a document or assigning sorting our information in a way where we are applying for a grant that isn't ready yet, we will be ready to slap that thing on someone's desk and go. And whether we have a small chance or not, that's my philosophy on is that we can, just to be as prepared as we possibly can to submit a grant in September.
I just want to make to Mark's point a little while ago, is everyone on the committee open to working with LCI? Right? If they agree and we have a contract and all that to offering a fair price and good service, are we all willing to jump in with LCI? Just want to make sure that we are, so we can answer that question and know where we're all heading. I'm seeing a lot of nodding, though.
Yeah, it has to be part of the
Do you want to vote?
best path
Oh,
forward.
Yeah.
But not to preclude it.
Yeah, okay. Because, yeah, we should be truly open-minded about it. So we go in that meeting with the best intentions. So in terms of that meeting, just in terms of Freedom of Access Act rules, 2 people is not a quorum. Anything less than 5 is not a quorum for this committee, but then when you go into the FOA, the main FOA website, 3 people is something. And so 2 people meeting is no big deal. 3 people, I'm not sure if we can actually do that. 3 people from a committee.
I think two's fine.
I think 2 people is a good number to represent us.
Okay.
This first meeting, the tone we're setting is a conversational, but some probing, and you don't need more than 2 people to cover those.
Yeah, to the point, we don't want the whole committee, we don't want it to be a game.
No.
We want it to be
We want them to feel
as
comfortable.
virtual as possible.
Yeah.
Yes, no?
Okay. All right. Well, we don't have to worry about who will be there yet.
Right.
It's premature, but
I mean, if we have our next meeting, we get the report, and then at that meeting, and we're well along with the whole work, then we're ready at the next meeting to answer those questions, figure out what the critical factors are that talk to them about, and then have somebody go and talk to them.
yeah. Okay.
So the next meeting which would be in 2 weeks,
We'll decide that.
we'll decide
Later in the
that.
meeting.
Let's decide
The next
that
meeting would
schedule.
be based on when we would have Axiom's final report? Is that what you're saying?
Or further.
That answers these questions. Yeah.
I think the final report that's handed to the select board, I would like that to have a report of the conversation with
Okay,
LCI.
fair enough. Fair enough.
But further along.
So we would have enough background to be able to then, do you think we need to have that before we ask for a meeting? Or should we?
Yeah, so we get Mark's analysis and his standards that we should talk to them about. And then we have a meeting where we knock that around, we decide who's going to go.
And we request the meeting.
How hard is it to get a meeting with?
Well, I was just
with-
going to ask who wants to be the one to do that because, well, whatever. I don't want to volunteer myself, but I do have, Randall gave me his direct line.
Yeah.
And if somebody else, I mean, I'm not,
Let's decide how to do this at the next meeting, but let's make sure at the next meeting we are ready to put it all together.
And that's when we would request the meeting.
To figure out.
From them.
I mean, Josh is the obvious one, and then
Right.
who's, I mean,
Right.
as I sit here, the 2 of you have a lot of skills that I see going, but we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
And,
Actually, the dumber the better. That's how I approach it.
I'm not going.
Just asking some questions. Let's not get too sophisticated.
Yeah.
This is just a series of questions.
Steve,
We don't know what we're talking
you got
about.
disqualified.
We are just trying to figure this out.
You're in
I recuse.
Which definitely points to somebody on this side of the table. You know what I mean?
The meetings.
Just
Okay,
be-
so then when is our next meeting?
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
I didn't know if you wanted to go to action items and wait for the action items to.
We can try to schedule our next meeting now.
2 weeks will be June 9th, I
So
believe.
June 9th, I'll first ask Steve, or really the committee, do we think we'll be done with the poll data collection in 2 weeks?
I think we should dictate that we will be.
We should be.
Okay,
I might not have the KMZ totally updated, but
Okay.
the fielding should be done by then.
okay.
And we should at least be, I mean, even if the KMZ is not created, we can talk about what we found.
Yeah, okay. And Mark,
Yes.
is that enough time for you to?
No.
Okay.
June 9th? No.
What's a good date for you?
Next week is better after that.
That's what makes
I mean,
sense.
even having, next week is a short week.
Yeah, that's true.
Eye.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm, really always.
No, we're talking about the week of June 9th, which is 2 weeks. But
Yeah.
you think that
The
the
16th
week
or
after
later.
that, which is the week of the 13th.
Yes.
So on the
We do the
16th is the town meeting.
Yeah, so we can't.
So
meet
the
that.
23rd, would that work?
Well,
Do
we could
these- do
meet
these have
some
to be-
other day of the week of the 13th. It isn't the 16th, like 13th, 14th.
Crazy.
Or we can't have this room. Oh, is that it? We can only have this room because.
There's another room.
Yeah.
There's another room, and it
Well-
really, so,
I mean, if
Because
you
I
wanted
thought you guys had said that there are so many town committees that.
Well, the 13th, we're having a very, 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 very short select board meeting that shouldn't last more than 15 minutes. So, I feel like that may be an advantageous day to take, to schedule that afterwards if we could do, I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense because we are just approving.
right. Just so you all know, I'm gone. I'll be in France from the June 10th until the 20th. But that doesn't mean you can't have.
Oh, it
have
absolutely does.
So let's do it on the 21st.
Yeah, no, it absolutely.
Let's do it on the 21st or the 22nd.
The 21st, he'll be asleep because he will have just come back and he'll still be jet lagged.
He's young, he'll.
So,
June 21st. Let's
We're
first,
basing this on,
okay, June 21st works for me. June 22nd does not.
the town calendar, June 21st is open right now,
what's
What
that?
day of the week is that?
the Tuesday. I mean, really, as long as one of these rooms is open and we can make it, it doesn't matter which day it is.
Tuesday or Thursdays.
I would have I have a meeting at 7:30 I have to be home for, so I would only be here from 6 to 7.
Okay,
We can start
Which is
earlier.
right now.
I think that's fine.
We can start earlier.
Or I could do it by Zoom.
Want to start earlier?
We could, we could start.
I would rather not. I mean, I've got a full day,
So
as it is,
Let's keep it at 6.
Six
Okay,
o'clock.
6, June 21st,
June 21st.
town office.
Good.
Okay, I'm glad that's there. And that'll be enough time, Mark, for you to
Yes.
get more information. Okay, great.
I will want to know more about his work.
Yeah.
Before then,
Yep,
so
that's no problem.
communicate.
Did
as
you share the Word doc with?
I'll add that over the end too.
Okay,
But
great.
frankly, even just providing some bullet points, Mark, that would be your advice
Yeah.
for a conversation would be super helpful.
Yeah.
Because it's a conversation and we just need bullet points.
So no meeting on that night? Or-
No meeting on that.
Right, I think we're asking the LCI section of the report should be useful thoughts on what one would require from a long-term relationship with a incumbent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Mark, that's doable?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have just a few things that I think is guiding principles of how to deal with this. That's it.
It's
should be-
one page.
Yeah, one
A few
page.
bullet points.
Yeah, and then maybe a little bit of background information of why I think you should consider this question, and then you guys can see how it feels in the meeting. I mean, we all do that. You walk in, you have, it's the Mike Tyson.
Mhm.
Everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. So, you get in there and you see how it goes and you go where it goes.
Yeah.
But, at
And
least it has
meanwhile, we
some sense.
keep watching the site for announcements of new grant opportunities. You can listen in on the Connect Maine Authority board meetings.
Yeah,
The next one is June 3rd, which I can't listen in, but it's at noon on June 3rd. And they're usually only an hour. Maine Connectivity Authority, and they're public.
Yeah, it's a little bit longer usually, but he's right. They try to keep it short if they can manage it. They're winding down. It's only Peggy Schaefer now. The Connect Maine Authority is one person.
Yeah.
So this it's not long.
Yeah. Okay.
In life before they get absorbed by MCA.
Mhm. All right, anything else on this agenda item, the feasibility study and talking to LCI? Okay. Okay, great. Let's move on to poll data collection. So we had a little training with the four of us at the town office earlier this week. I think I'm excited to have the team start going out. Cheryl is interested. She can't be here tonight. I think Arlene said she was also interested in joining the teams. Michael, did you want to join with looking at polls?
I don't think I'm going to be able to, but thank you.
Okay.
I think Arlene demurred, didn't she? She said she would not be able to.
Okay.
Oh, can I just ask clarification? So 4 people, it was not a meeting, and you do not have to send me a video to take minutes from.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just looked at polls. We didn't talk.
Right. But Josh and I had an earlier discussion. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got 2 vests, you said?
I have 2.
Okay.
I sent out today 2 Google Docs. One is a list of all the roads, broken into 6 groupings that we can decide who wants, what teams want to grab each of those. I've already done with my wife driving. I did 52, 235, 105, and 173. So those are done. It's all the other roads we need to do. The only question mark I had is how people feel about addressing a lot of the private roads. I mean, if it's aerial, Mike Ray, perfect example. Talking to him last night. Quarry Road, it's not marked private or anything, but am I going to drive down this road? It's somebody's driveway or whatever. But there's LCI.
You can see it
going down through there and out into the woods in the pasture or whatever.
No problem.
Right, I had no problem with it or whatever, but you look at Route 1 and the number of roads like that, and when you see, if it's underground, we're just going to say, I don't know, maybe, and go to the next. But if it's aerial, it would be nice to have a view as to what goes down through there.
Yeah.
I would just say whatever the comfort level is in any given driveway or road. Somebody's got the.
I'll just add with him.
What's Mark going to say?
I think it's dangerous to go down private roads. And I would definitely do it with 2 people if you're going to do that.
Yes.
And I think we live in a different world.
Yeah.
No matter how much you love your neighbors.
And the majority of roads in Lincolnville are private. Yeah. They all have a name to them because they have to legally for the fire department and EMS, but and that's also ties into why there's a problem with the internet, because most of the roads that we have here in town are private. I mean, if you had a yellow cherry or something like that on the car, it might help, but.
Do private roads get plowed by the town?
No.
Okay,
So I do.
Yeah, even more dangerous. So yeah, see, if that was going on, then I'd be like, yeah, you can drive down there. They're used to having public people.
I tell you a few roads.
But if they're not doing
I drove down a lot.
and some people are comfortable with it. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm not saying you don't do it, but I had people going out in Washington, and as women, they were like, "Ooh." I was like, yeah, if you get the hairs on the back of your neck or you're just feeling uncomfortable, don't even bother. Don't worry about that. Yeah. And, if you have LCI at the beginning of that road and they go down a couple of poles, I mean, do they go all the way down? Hey, that's really.
But you can just kind of assume and have binoculars. You can see, okay, it's going in that direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, especially on the private roads because they're leading to nowhere, right? There's an endpoint. They're coming down to the lake. They're going somewhere that stops. They're not like connecting into other public roads on the other side. So,
there's private roads you look at. Oh, it's a subdivision. It's going up to I'm going to drive up it.
That's right.
Yeah,
and then it's the little teeny narrow.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe not today.
I did ask David to provide a list of the official list of town roads.
Okay.
And I was once he sends it, so he said he'd send it to me, I'll highlight all the roads on that document I posted. These are the public ones and these are the not. Because the Stan Silly Road is a public road. It's a driveway, freaking 2 houses. But there's a lot.
So is mine.
There's some of those too.
Mine's public and it's my driveway.
Okay.
And mine used to be public.
Well, and
And
also,
certainly we don't get plowed by the town.
Right.
and what about like in, by Pitcher Pond? Because there's a million little, I mean, there's that main road, but then there's all that, you know, goes
First
away to
Avenue,
the
Second
15th
Avenue,
Ave
Third
or whatever,
Avenue,
yeah.
all that.
Those I would feel fine driving.
Yeah, those are.
Oh, no, those, yes, I mean,
Yeah, those camp roads and stuff, I got no problem with. It's a lot of the, Route 1 is where all the private ones is, and there's a couple ones in the back roads, but
50,
nothing too major. Okay.
Okay, so-
And
so-
I put the second document I shared was just kind of a list of instructions on how to notate, and I couldn't find, the town couldn't provide a map, paper map that we could use or anything, so I really just looked at it, I put a list of recommendations in there as X road. It's either fiber, no fiber, fiber from X to Y. And you can do an intersection, an address off a mailbox, whole
I haven't
number.
looked at what you said yet. Do we actually input it on a laptop in the car, or?
Take notes.
Just
Or if you want to put it on a laptop, that's fine.
I actually know what we
Yeah,
want
just
from
take
us.
notes. Take notes and I'll leave it back to you.
When did you send it, Steve? I don't see it.
I sent it this
it
afternoon.
was instructions and then also a map, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no
So
more
no,
list.
no, no, no,
The list of roads
Yeah.
is one document, the second one is a list of instructions.
Yeah, we done it.
Hugely helpful.
Okay, well, you two need vests, so you're gonna check vests out from the town office right now. I promised David Kenny that this would all be tracked, so that they don't run away.
Who's gonna work with who, I guess, is.
I guess you two work together?
There you go, okay.
Okay. Ceremonial handing of the vests.
I can't tell who's getting them, and I think the minutes have to reflect who's getting vests, so.
Do you have enough? Because there's 4 of us, you just have 3, right?
I've got two.
This is work. He's got two. He's all
I've
set.
got two in my
I'll
truck.
take it.
Grab one. Jay.
I'm sure I have one, but I'll.
Go ahead.
I would just say, if
I'll need
just
those
from a
back.
safety perspective, if you do have to stop and look, 4-way flashers on, put your vest on, just do it safe.
Are either one of you going to be?
Are you gonna do it? I mean, I might be able to free up one afternoon to do something, but it's,
That's up to
I
you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
work 10
Maybe
hours a
for me,
day.
I
It's
thought I
very
had
difficult.
vest, so, yeah. I think that's.
I have a hard hat, I don't have the best.
You're doing it right, though?
Maybe one afternoon. I'm
Okay.
pretty busy.
You don't have the bulletproof variety. These all have holes in them.
Sure.
Is there any place in town that is more likely not to have service?
Oh, sure, the northern, the least populated Searsmont end of town. Yeah, because you have
Louis Mountain Road.
it's the least economically attractive.
We may actually, I live up in that end of town, they just, because of the grants for the school kids, they just got it in.
Right.
Before that, there was.
So, from my perspective, if you guys have one afternoon, you should concentrate on the areas that might not have as much service. That would be helpful from my perspective.
Yeah.
Just one afternoon, just to have some impact. If you want to have good impact,
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. Because, at the end of the day, we're gonna I don't know about GPS coordinate, but we're gonna do something and put it on a map.
Yep.
So you can visually see where we think service is, where we think they don't have service. So, and then we'll count the homes.
Right.
And say there's this many homes. I mean, it's pretty, I'm a simple guy, so that's how you do it. And then you argue with the funder that these places are unserved.
See an old camp building down there, it's unserved.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's why I thought Pitcher Pond Road is great, because there's a lot of structures down there, and I mean, like, we don't have one anymore. My parents used to have a camp down there, and I know it was
You
not.
get fiber on North Croptown.
Yeah.
Third Avenue.
The other point to that, by the way, is if you then have friends on some of these places, asking them to do a speed test or
Yes.
asking them to
Mhm.
tell you what their experience is would be helpful.
Yeah.
Even if you have 5 of those,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. So that's how I would sort of see how you do, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. And then as soon as you do it, update the Google Docs so other teams aren't going out
Google Doc, what you've
and
done.
replicating.
Just a Word doc and update it.
I've also thought of some ways you're going to save money by using volunteers. So
Okay.
we'll make sure that that's included.
Good.
There you go.
All of you getting spliced rates, just so you know.
What's that?
All of you are getting spliced rates. You'll be fine.
I want to. I'm excited.
I'm sure you would. Yeah.
I
hear you.
I think we're underestimating the potential people that would want to come out and serve their community. We're all looking for a way to,
I don't
make a
disagree
tangible
with
impact.
that, but I think I've figured out a way to do that.
Okay.
That could be helpful and save money.
Great.
So,
Okay.
in my mind.
I look forward to hearing about that. Okay, anything else on poll data collection? Okay, moving on. Action items. Let's review what we all have to do. So poll data, you're going to work on the report. I'll say, so I reached out to David Kinney about updating our broadband page. He hasn't gotten back to me. So hopefully we'll get that done by our next meeting, because right now it doesn't have our previous survey report or all of our agendas and minutes. I'd like to just be able to update it myself. It's, he's doing a lot, and so website updating is probably not high on his list. Any other action items that we haven't talked about? Okay, moving on, non-agenda items. Arlene wrote something in the chat before she had to go. 2 weeks ago, 262 people had taken the speed test, and it only increased to 272 as of today. I'd be willing to do outreach to the community. Currently have 27% participation.
Is that partly because of the website issue?
Website.
Because it's buried on the website?
I don't know.
I don't think it's as buried as the issues that Josh was talking about was getting some of our materials up there.
Oh.
Is it buried?
There's still one more click that people have to do.
Right.
People in general don't even go to the town website.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, that's a very good point. So maybe we should take her up on that. I mean, maybe we need to put a few flyers up.
we need to do more
in the
outreach.
store
Yes.
Or at the post office.
We should get something up on Lincolnville Main News, and whatever the other one's called.
The
and
Facebook
the bulletin
page.
board.
Yeah, I will do that.
Have you looked at your results lately?
I haven't. Have any of you?
I received the CSV, the spreadsheet of results. Haven't tried to analyze it. I can send that along to everybody if.
Would anyone like to make a flyer? And we can put it up in the general store, in the library. We might have actually done that 2 years ago.
I thought we did, but I think it's a very good idea.
Okay. Who wants to take it?
I don't know, are we allowed to do it in the post offices?
I'm not sure what we should try.
We should try it, because that's a place of
Very high traffic. What's that, Dave?
Arlene wanted to run with it, so we asked her to run.
Yeah,
I'll ask her if she wants to make a
Yeah,
flyer.
she wants to do outreach.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we suggested a poster at
A flyer
the
that could
library.
be posted in the best.
Great.
2 Facebook pages.
The library, the general store,
Yeah.
Breaks.
Drake's.
Drake's, definitely Drake's. Okay. Great. Anything else under non-agenda items? Okay.
Could even be at the Camden Hannaford for Lincoln, because most Lincolnville people.
Do they have a place to put up flyers at Hannaford?
That I do not know.
If they,
I know they have a place to take all my money for groceries, but I don't know if they have a place for flyers.
Can we get LCS involved? Can it tell all the kids to go home and have their parents take the speech?
Well, we did that.
They
Didn't
tried-
we do that
yeah.
last time? We had
The
a
survey.
flyer to take home with parents?
Yeah.
To your parents? What that did that? I think that was a good idea, actually.
It was.
And
Let
we
me.
do, and we also did the every EDD,
Yeah.
every box,
The mailer.
the mailer.
Mailer, yeah. Well, let's start with the school. Does anyone have a good relationship with the principal?
Paul?
Paul, yeah.
Yeah, I could send him something. I mean, I could reach out to him for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you send him a note asking if that can be included in the newsletter?
Okay.
I would think the link should just be the main Broadband Coalition website.
Yeah.
So they just
super
go there and then they
easy.
just take
Yeah.
the test. Okay. So I'm adding that to your action item.
I would just tell them to go to the town website and go in.
I think
They're slow.
It's
I think
one
it's
extra
adding
click.
too many steps. Okay. Great. All right. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. The motion was moved by Jordan, seconded by Stephen. Any discussion? All right. Roll call vote. Michael, how do you vote?
I vote to adjourn.
Okay. Dave?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
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 Stephen, yes, and I vote yes. It is unanimous, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I like that.
Steve, I can't find the email, so if you can send that to me again, check spam and everything.
Okay. I know.
Okay.
You left.
Don't have to worry about losing it. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Are we still live?
first.
We are. 1 second. Bye, Michael.